I want to express yet again the profound solidarity of the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. I want to do so especially at this time when the enemies of democracy in Venezuela and out of Venezuela would wish to subvert the will of the people and the law of the land in Venezuela. You know, I was on a television program, a radio program, sorry, out of Trinidad. They called me one morning this week. They want to have a discussion with me. On the program were two academics and the journalists. And the journalist began by asking me this question. Well, made a statement and then asked the question. Given the unfolding humanitarian disaster in Venezuela, and given the fact that you are a friend of Venezuela, what are you doing to help in this regard? I told the lady, I said, well, I must have missed something in the news. I don't know of an unfolding humanitarian disaster in Venezuela. I know that there is one in Syria with the refugees. I know that there is one in Libya. There is one in Kenya, we know. There is in Lebanon. There is in the Gaza Strip. I know all of those things. I know there is a humanitarian disaster on the doorstep of Europe. I know that there are economic challenges in Venezuela, arising principally from a drought. 6 months. No water practically for 6 months. No rain. The place is dry, affecting water for human consumption, for industry, and for electricity. A lot of people don't know that Venezuela, despite it is awash with oil, 70% of its electricity is generated by hydro. That is a historic phenomenon. So when you hear you have blackouts in Venezuela, you say, well, boy, something must be wrong with Maduro. And they got so much oil. The fact is this, historically they made a decision to go hydro and to export the oil. It makes economic sense for them. Until, of course, you have a drought. The El Nino effect. And I know there is a conspiracy inside of Venezuela by certain traditional economic and political elites to undermine Venezuela in alliance with elements externally, the same set of forces that carried out a constitutional coup d'etat against Dilma Rousseff, the duly elected president of the Federative Republic of Brazil. And I know that there are political challenges in Venezuela because people forget certain fundamental issues. Venezuela is a presidential system. You have a president and you have a Congress, a legislative assembly. The president is in the hands of the Bolivarian party. The legislature is in the hands of the opposition. But in the United States of America, the President Obama belongs to the Democratic Party, and the Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, belong to the Republicans currently, and they have their battles and they have their wars, but it is not a fight to the death. Because you control the legislature doesn't mean that you control the judiciary, which is an independent arm of government. It doesn't mean that you control the army, because the army is part of the executive, which the president controls. The president also, being the executive, controls the main company, state-owned company, PDVSA, the oil company. So I don't understand how, if you win elections to the legislature, that everybody else must fall down and allow you to take over. Democracy doesn't work like that. It's like in St. Vincent. They don't win, but they want to run things. What kind of cockeyed view of democracy is this? And I have faith in the people of Venezuela to resolve their problems, and I urge that they resolve those problems peacefully and within the framework of the law. They asked me on the radio program, well, why doesn't the president want to have the recall referendum? I had to point out, not because the legislature asks for a referendum, the referendum takes place. The Constitution of Venezuela, which incidentally was a constitution pushed by Hugo Chavez, which introduced for the first time the recall provision. You have to first of all have a 1% certified votes in a petition, to then have the right to go and get a 10% of the population, the voting population, to say they want a referendum, and that has to be verified. Because you have a population of 27 million. If you have a voting population of 13 million, it means that you have to get 1.3 million signatures. And those signatures have to be verified. And if those signatures are not verified by the proper authority, you have to go back and get the petition. You got to get the names. Follow the law, follow the Constitution, follow the procedure. And then, when you get the recall, if you manage to get the signatures, you have to get one more vote, more than the president got in his election. So if he got 7 million votes, to recall him, you have to get 7,000,001. There is a law, there is a procedure. Follow it. But they want to engage themselves in illegalities. I'm talking about those who wish to bring about the end of the Bolivarian Revolution. But I know this. In 1976, when the old economic and political elites were in power, they look askance, blindly, at the cooperation between the intelligence arm of the Venezuelan state and the counter-revolutionaries among the Miami exiles. And they are the ones who organized the downing, the blowing up of the Cubana plane, the first act of modern terrorism in the Caribbean, off the coast of Barbados, in October 1976. You see, you have to remember. And when they talk to me about, when you see it on the newscast, you see it on CNN, on Fox, that some people are going inside of garbage to look for food. In New York City, they do that. In Spain, as a result of the crisis, they do that. In Greece, the fountainhead of democracy in the Western world, looking for food in the garbage is not to be approved, is not to be condoned. It reflects a challenge, a difficulty, but don't come with the propaganda because you simply want to get rid of the government. If the people want to get rid of the government, the people will get rid of the government. Simple, straightforward. And I want to say this. I am going to write a letter to my friend, the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, who has played a wrong role in allowing himself and the OAS to be manipulated as a battering ram against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. He has overplayed his hand and he must stop it. I am not denouncing him to say he's not a good and decent human being. But he has overreached and he has made errors and he must stop it. There are some people who are calling for he himself to be recalled as the Secretary General of the OAS. I am not going there, at least not on the 29th of May. But I'm saying that he must be very measured in his approach and not be polemical and contentious. That is not his role as the Secretary General of the OAS. I want to make those pronouncements very clear. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, our government and people, we are not fair weather friends. We are friends of the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
You came from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross. My death.
Similarly, we are in solidarity with the government and people of the Republic of Cuba. And while we are heartened by the moves by President Obama to open up relations with Cuba and to remove the executive order in relation to the executive designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism, I'm calling here again, as we have done repeatedly as a government, for the President to go further and use his executive authority to roll back many features of the embargo, the blockade against Cuba, even though we do recognize that the complete removal of the embargo would require legislative action in the Congress. But we need to see further movement. But you can't, on the one hand, remove Cuba from the list of a state sponsor of terrorism. You can't say that Cuba is no longer seen as a security threat to the United States, but you have an executive order say that Venezuela is a security threat to the United States. How could Venezuela be a security threat to the United States of America? Small Venezuela with 27 million people, with no significant armed forces. When you have the greatest power in the world, the United States with 330 million people, and the most powerful military the world has ever seen. You see, we need to keep these things in proportion. And I say all of that while reaffirming yet again our friendship and solidarity with the government and people of the United States of America. I don't have to take America's side on an issue not to be their friend. Because we could agree to disagree on certain things. Like, for instance, when I went to Iran in 2009, the Americans at the time had no relations with Iran. And we went, and shortly after I came back, some people from the United States government came to see me to ask me, why is it that I went to Iran? I said, I don't understand, Your Excellency, is the question. They said to me, Prime Minister, we are not questioning your right as a sovereign country so to do. I said, no, I'm not raising the fig leaf of sovereignty between friends. I just don't understand the question. I said, tell me something. In the Hebrew Bible, I meet Iran in the form of the Persian Empire in the book of Daniel. Could you please tell me where in the Old Testament or in the New Testament I could find the United States of America? They laugh, but the point I was making is that this is a civilization of nearly 6,000 years old. And the Holy Father, Pope Benedict, had asked me to take a message to the President of Iran when I was going there. And I took the message and responded. Now, the United States have opened dialogue with Iran. So what happened? We have to wait on America to do something before we do it. We have to look at our own national interests, recognizing, of course, the realities of the world. It doesn't mean that because we butt in with crease, that we still can't play shots. And that is why today I reaffirm our friendship and solidarity with the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and with the Republic of Cuba, and at the same time with the United States of America, because they are also our friends.
Dreams of brighter days, Giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks.